This is Tyrese, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What's up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Gold. I'm going solo once again today because Facci is still out of town, but have no fear. He'll be back for our next episode, so really looking forward to having him back for that one. But we're going to be recapping this Pacers 76ers game today, and I think this was a game that the Pacers would not have won had this been about 2 months ago. This is a Pacers team that has just kind of flipped the script defensively, and I think their defense is the reason they won this game. And it's not usual for us to say that, but once again, the Pacers hold an opponent to that 100 threshold right there at 102 points for Philadelphia. I mean, this really was a game the Pacers, in my opinion, would have lost because their defense would not have been good enough to stop a game like this from being turned into a complete disappointment. So this Pacers team kind of came out flat. They were down 8-1 early on the first couple of minutes. Rick Carlisle calls the timeout. You know, they had a really rough stretch to end the second quarter like they normally do. I think it was an 11-2 run from Philadelphia to cut the game to 2. They start off the third quarter by going on a nice little run there. The 76ers did. The Pacers were down once again, but then they kind of slowed down, figured things out, and turned things around. So this was a good game. This is a good win for the Pacers, who are now 14-4 in their last 18 games, 8-1 in the month of January, the best record of any team in January, and they've won every game in January by double digits. I mean, this Pacers team is playing very good basketball. So while this game to me was a little clunky, it felt like there wasn't a great flow to it. It was a game the Pacers needed to win. This is a team you have to beat. You're looking at the 76ers without like half their roster, half their rotation. I mean, Joel Embiid didn't play. Paul George didn't play. Kyle Lowry didn't play. Caleb Martin didn't play. So a lot. Yabusele didn't play. There's a lot of good players here for Philadelphia that didn't play, and the Pacers are at full strength aside from the two guys that were out early in the season, Isaiah Jackson and James Wiseman with injuries. So now there's almost like a logjam here in terms of the rotation. And I think that's like the biggest storyline moving forward outside of this game. So let's talk about this game, though, because early on, it was not looking good for your Pacers. I thought Miles Turner did a good job early on, trying to kind of get things going. He had a pretty good game overall, but Pascal Siakam, you look at the stat line tonight, and it's just like, okay, the guy ended up finishing with 21 points. He was 6 of 12 from the field, 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and he was a plus 14. He had 2 blocks, 0 turnovers. You're like, plus 14? Like, how in the world did this guy have such a great game? If you were to watch the first half, you would have been like, man, Pascal was not playing good. I mean, it might have been one of the worst first halves of Pascal's time here in Indiana. I think he was 2 of 7 from the field for like 8 points. Felt like he was missing every free throw that he took. He ended up going 9 for 14 from the free throw line, but he was like, missed most of them, missed 4 of them in the first half. So it was just a rough start for Pascal early on, but he figured things out. And I think the Pacers did a very good job of utilizing Pascal differently against the zone that the 76ers were throwing. They were kind of running this 2-1-2 weird zone matchup. I think at one point they did go to a box and one, but they're running a 2-1-2, but it was kind of like spread out. And Pascal, they started utilizing him more in the middle. And I think that was a nice change of pace because normally you'll see like Andrew Nembhard in the middle, which he did still run the middle at times this game, but it was good to see a different, player in there, someone with a little bit more size, and Pascal did a very good job. I mean, 6 of 12, 50% from the field, that's really good, and the fact that he got to the free throw line for 14 free throw attempts is something I can't remember seeing him do all season long. So really good by him to kind of, put the pressure on Philadelphia and get them in foul trouble and take advantage of that. So I thought Pascal Siakam was probably the best player overall in the game, but I feel like it was more of a second half performance than it was an entirety of a game thing. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Miles Turner, he was pretty steady throughout the entirety of the game. He had 18 points. He had 11 rebounds. He had 2 assists. He also had a block. He did have 2 turnovers, but he was a plus 5 in this game. Got himself into a little bit of foul trouble there, had 5 personal fouls, but it was a good game from Turner. And honestly, like he had some nice dunks. There was one dunk that he did miss that would have been an absolute poster. I love that he went for the yam. Unfortunately, did not finish on it, but still, you love the aggression. You love the way that he plays. And it was just good to see him kind of, utilize himself more down low and not just as a three-point guy. We saw him make 8 threes against Detroit. Like, he's very capable of doing it. But I do like seeing a variance of different options. Like, Andre Drummond is a guy that used to have his way with Turner. And in this game tonight, I did not feel like Andre Drummond was very good at all. He only had 3 rebounds and 8 points in 27 minutes. So it was really good to see Turner just kind of take advantage of that matchup and kind of prove to everybody, like, look, there was a time and a place where Andre Drummond was just a rebound machine, but that time and place is no more. Miles Turner is a significantly better player than Andre Drummond. So Good stuff from Turner tonight. From the other three starters, we saw Andrew Nembhard, Tyrese Halliburton, and Ben Mathurin get the start. A lot of question marks there. Would Aaron Nesmith start or would Ben Mathurin start? Well, Mathurin got the start. He played 25 minutes. He was 3 of 5 from the field, or 3 of 6 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3. So he made all his 2-pointers. One was an alley-oop from Tyrese Halliburton. 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 8 points, 5 turnovers, though. That's where it's got to stop. He did have 2 steals, but he did have 5 turnovers. And that's just not great from him. I do believe there was 1 turnover he had in the first quarter. Rick Carlisle didn't call a timeout, but he did call for Ben Sheppard to sub into the game. He subs into the game for Mathurin, and instead of Mathurin going to the bench and not playing the rest of the quarter or waiting to come back in when his rotation was ready, Carlisle basically just had a conversation with him about what he did and like what he didn't like. And instead of penalizing him for a mistake that he made, him and Carlisle did some coaching there, and then he allowed Mathurin to check right back in for Sheppard. So it was kind of a weird little stint there in the first quarter for Sheppard to go in for 15 seconds and come right back out. But it was a good teaching moment there from Carlisle, and I appreciate from Carlisle that instead of just kind of ripping him a new one, putting him on the bench, and not letting him play through it, he coached him up, and he just kind of encouraged him. And I think right now it's a weird dynamic for a lot of these players because you're talking about Aaron Nesmith, Jarace Walker, Ben Mathurin, all fighting for minutes, and we know that Mathurin and Nesmith are going to play. So it looks like Walker, based on how the rotation landed tonight, is kind of out of the rotation in terms of the 10-man rotation. But it's like Mathurin and Nesmith are kind of competing internally a little bit for who should be the 5th starter. So there's a lot of pros and cons to why you would start one over the other, and we could have that debate. We've done a lot of that on this podcast, but I think that Carlisle said it's going to be fluid, and he's not closing the door on anything, and he's keeping everything open, and he said stay tuned. So no direct answer from Carlisle on that. I do want to touch on that a little bit later and kind of give my thoughts on it, but I just thought that for Mathurin, it was good to see Carlisle allow him to kind of work through that instead of instantly pulling him, because he could have just pulled him. He could have not played him, and he could have put Nesmith right in right then, or Sheppard and kept him in. But I thought that was smart of Rick to kind of help Mathurin kind of figure this one out. Now Tyrese Halliburton, this was not a good game to me from Tyrese Halliburton. He might have had a few moments where he had some big shots, but 4 of 11 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3. He had 5 rebounds. He had 9 assists. The problem, though, is Tyrese Halliburton had a rare 5 turnover game, similar to Mathurin. They both had 5 turnovers. And it's like, when you see Halliburton have that many turnovers, you're not expecting the Pacers to win. I mean, when he only has 9 points, we've seen games this year where he has not been a prominent scorer and the Pacers can still find ways to win. But when he's turning the ball over like that and he's a -3, you usually win the Halliburton minutes, even if he doesn't play significantly great. So I just felt like this was a weird game for Ty. I did not feel like he played particularly well. He did have some big buckets, I will say, throughout the game and kind of stopped some runs. But other than that, you wish you could have got more. Like I said, this game was very clunky from the beginning. So it was not going to be like this offensive juggernaut we've seen from the Pacers recently. It came down to defense. And I think that a lot of it just, their defense being able to lock in made a big difference. But to me, Halliburton didn't have to do too much for the Pacers to get a 13-point victory over the 76ers. So good to see growth from the rest of the guys, but other than that, not a great game from Halliburton. Now with Nembhard, I felt like Nembhard had a very mediocre game for Nembhard standards. I mean, he was guarding Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey, ended up going 10 of 23 from the field for 28 points, and he was a -6 in a game they lost by 13. So, I mean, obviously the 76ers were significantly better with Maxey out on the floor. Really their only true shot creator and kind of force out there. So you throw Nembhard on him. Nembhard got himself in foul trouble. Tyrese Maxey is a tough cover. So, Nembhard ends up getting his 5th foul, I think middle of the 4th quarter. They sub Ben Sheppard in for Ben Mathurin, and they slid Nembhard off of Maxey and threw Sheppard on him. So, it was one of those games where you usually don't see Nembhard get pulled from the guy, but I just want to say this, whether you think Nembhard's the best defender or not, whether you think that Nesmith is better than him, a lot of guys have been saying, Drew is the anchor of the defense. So when you've got Siakam saying that and Turner's been saying that, they rely on Drew to do a lot. And so I kind of give him a little bit of slack only because every single night being asked to go out there and do the hardest thing possible and exert every bit of energy to guarding the other team's best player every single night while also being an offensive hub for this team and kind of playing their point guard role at times because Ty was off the ball a lot in this game. It was a lot of Nembhard bringing the ball up. So for asking him to do a lot, I give him a lot of credit, and I don't want to like override or over criticize his game too much, considering that he was still a +3 in this game. He was a positive in this game. Only had 7 points. He had 3 assists. I mean, he had only had 1 turnover. So like some good stuff there. Just got into some foul trouble, and I feel like at times, especially in the second half, Maxey was kind of having his way with Nembhard. But still, Nembhard's a very solid defender, and once again had a very solid game. It wasn't a great game, but it was a solid game. I mean, a little underwhelming from what I'm used to expecting with Nembhard, but overall, I liked it. Now, let's get into the bench. I think the game clearly was won by the bench tonight, and here's why. You had 4 players on the bench in double figures, and that's not something we've been accustomed to seeing this season, but Ben Sheppard had 12, Aaron Nesmith had 12, Thomas Bryant had 12, and TJ McConnell had 10. That's really good stuff. That's 46 points from your bench on just 4 players, and then you include Obi Toppin and Jarace Walker's 6 points. That's 52 of the 115 points. So you really had like an even balance of like scoring right here in terms of like where your points came from. So it wasn't so heavy with the starters getting a lot of the points. It was a nice mix. And there was a stretch there in the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, where it just kind of felt like the bench pulled this one away. And I think the Sixers got like back to 11 and Carlisle went back to the starters. But it was a really nice stretch there. I want to get to Nesmith here in a second, but that stretch was really important because Aaron Nesmith will not be playing the second half and a lot of probably I don't know how many games moving forward because they do have time off, but he didn't play the second half against Detroit, didn't play the second half tonight, or excuse me, Saturday night against Philadelphia. And so they put Jarace Walker into that spot for the rotation. He got in with about 3 minutes left in the third quarter. So this is a guy that's been playing every single game this season, finally gets a shot in the third quarter to get some minutes. And he's a young kid. And a lot of guys that feel like they deserve minutes, and I think he's earned them based on how he's played, could have moped a little bit, could have been a little upset. But all he does is he goes in and he has a beautiful driving basket to the rim, two-handed flush. Very next possession, he is in the grill. I believe it was Kelly Oubre. I could be mistaken on who he was guarding, but he was in the grill of whoever he was guarding, and that player was trying to create some space, and they kind of threw a little chicken wing at Jarace Walker's face and chest area, and they called the offensive foul. So that's a turnover on the 76ers for the offensive foul. Jarace Walker created it. Now, the very next play, Jarace had a beautiful wide-open three, takes a shot, he misses it, but Pascal Siakam gets the rebound and finishes it home with a two-handed slam as well. So, it was just like that little stretch right there where the Pacers turned things around. They were like up by 3, and it now became 7 points because Jarace Walker came into the game and had a good impact on the game. So Jarace, to me, he ended up playing a total of 9 minutes in this game, and it was all in that end of the third, beginning of the fourth, and he ended up being a plus 12. So he was still able to impact the game. He had 3 rebounds in that stint. He also had 2 assists. Like he's trying to earn his minutes, and you got to give the guy a lot of credit for doing just that. And telling Coach Carlisle, like, yeah, you want to leave me out of the rotation? Like, that's a big mistake, and you're making it tough on Carlisle and his coaching staff to figure out which guys belong and which guys don't. Now, I do think that it does help when you are this deep that if someone's not playing well, you have options, but like, at the same time, I think everybody is in agreement here that's a Pacer fan. They want to see Jarace continue to get minutes so he can continue to develop and just grow as a player. The last thing you want to do is have a guy that's got some confidence built up now lose that confidence because he's pulled from the rotation, which we don't know for sure exactly how it's going to play out because it's only a 1-game sample size. But, Pascal talked about it after the game. He's like, look, I told Jarace, like, coach is very transparent. He lets you know, like, yeah, you're kind of the 11th man right now. In tonight's game anyway, and you can pout, you can go out there and feel sorry for yourself because you feel like you deserve it and, kind of be sad about it. He said, or you can go out there and earn your minutes and give it everything you got for as long as you're out there. And I think that's exactly what Jarace did, and it's great to see the young prospect, taking that advice from a veteran like Pascal. So I really enjoyed that element, and that, I was cheering for Jarace. I found myself just like really excited for him, knowing he was going to probably play the second half because of Nesmith's minute restriction. I wanted to see how he responded, and I was cheering for him to do that, respond well, and I think he did. I mean, Coach Carlisle even brought it up. Like, that was one of the first things he said at the beginning of his press conference was just like how Jarace turned the game around for them. So, Like I said, it was a clunky game. It was a 3-point game at that point, and Jarace comes in, hadn't played all game long, and kind of sparks a 4-0 run to extend the lead back to 7. And 7 points isn't a lot in today's NBA, but it's a bigger cushion than 3, where this could have got uglier. So I really enjoyed that moment from Jarace. Now, some other guys that I thought really stepped up in this game, TJ McConnell. Oh my goodness, finally, vintage McConnell is back. We got a great effort from TJ McConnell there in the fourth quarter. I mean, one of the most incredible things about TJ McConnell is what Quinn Buckner does when TJ McConnell gets one of those, backcourt steals. He goes, "Oh, we got a McConnell." Well, we almost had one, and the ball went out of bounds. So the Sixers got the ball back. Very next possession, TJ McConnell does the same thing, but as he's falling out of bounds, he throws the ball off a 76ers player. Pacers get the ball. I was at the arena, so I don't know how Quinn Buckner responded, but I did see a highlight where he was going nuts. So I didn't see it in real time, but I knew Quinn Buckner was loving him some McConnell stuff, because that is one of his favorite things to see in a game. And if there's anybody from FanDuel Sports Network listening to this, I will just say, when TJ McConnell's in the game, can we please have the camera angles never leave TJ McConnell, off camera when he's pressuring in the backcourt? Because a lot of times you'll see a Pacer player make the basket, they'll zoom in on their face after they make it, and then all of a sudden you have no idea McConnell happened, because it happened so quick, and he gets that steal. The only way you know is because Quinn Buckner is letting you know. So I would just say, like, camera guys, if you guys could just stay on McConnell or in the backcourt instead of transitioning to showing a close-up of the guy that made the basket, that would be great, because we missed too many McConnells on tape because it happens so quick, and we don't want to miss those because they're really fun to watch. But he had a great game, and I thought Thomas Bryant did a very good job. He played 20 minutes in this game, 5 of 7 from the field, 2 of 3 from three-point line, six rebounds in this game as well. Had a couple of really dumb turnovers, one that actually got him pulled from the game in the first half. Coach Carlisle, immediately after he threw that pass, was like, "Miles, go check in." But no, I think that Thomas Bryant did a very good job in this game, and I thought he was really, really impactful with that second unit. But probably the player to me that had the most impact in the second unit was Ben Sheppard. Ben Sheppard, like I mentioned earlier, he had to come in for Nembhard and defend Tyrese Maxey with the game on the line. He had like the dagger 3 that was from Halliburton, just a beautiful catch and shoot from him. And it's one of those things where we've talked about Ben Sheppard's numbers, right? We said, we want to see Ben Sheppard become a better shooter, or it feels like he should be a better shooter than he actually is. Well, he hit the shots tonight as he went 3 of 6 from deep. And like, that's what you want from Ben Sheppard. Ben Sheppard, especially when you're playing a team that's going to play a lot of zone, this is where you have to make teams pay, because they want to slow the Pacers down. They don't want them to play their pace. And if they can kind of muck things up, you need guys to step up. So Ben Sheppard, to me, was a guy that was like an absolute dog in this game and an absolute difference maker. The standout for the bench overall was him, and just playing some closing minutes. And I know that our good friend Seth Johnson, I believe it's Seth Johnson, Seth, I know his first name anyway, from Nuvo, he asked Aaron Nesmith about Sheppard's development and what he's seen from him, and he's like, look, he's a great defender. Like, a lot of guys were praising how good of a defender Sheppard is, and it's crazy that he's only in his second year, but it's like they need him to be out there because of how good his defense is. And that's where it even makes it more difficult when you're having that conversation about Jarace, because like, I could make the debate that you could play Jarace over Sheppard, especially with Nesmith back. Do you actually need Sheppard's defense compared to what Jarace can bring you? Some might argue that you shouldn't play Sheppard over him, especially since he was later in terms of being selected in the draft. But Sheppard's earned it. Sheppard's a good player. I mean, Sheppard is a guy that deserves minutes. I mean, that's the problem. 11 of these guys deserve minutes. And so you just have to give a lot of praise to Ben Sheppard for always being ready. And it's just kind of like he's the calm in the storm a lot of times. He's not going to get rattled too often. He's just going to go out there and do what he's asked to do. And the ceiling might not be as high as a Jarace Walker, no, but he is really good, really impactful for this team. And I think it can't be stated enough how special he is to the success of this team as well. I mean, just look at what he did last year as a rookie in the second half of the season. Like, they needed him. They had to rely on him a lot, especially in the playoffs. And I thought he played particularly well. Did not shoot the ball well, as we talked about with Facci a couple of episodes ago against the Celtics. But overall, like, he was really good defensively, just knows how to play basketball the right way. And I hate that cliche, but it's just true. He understands it. He's got the fundamentals down, knows his role, and excels in it. And that's sometimes difficult. Some guys want to get outside of their role because they want to prove something. Ben Sheppard knows like this is my role and I'm going to do it well. So kudos to him. Now, lastly, I did forget to talk about Aaron Nesmith because he only played the first half, like I said. But my goodness, Aaron Nesmith has been amazing in the minutes he's played so far this season. I think he's played a total of like 20 minutes, and he's looked really, really, really good. I mean, you're talking about 4 or 5 shooting for 12 points in 11 minutes. That's more than a point a minute. Like that's how impactful he was. And he hit like 3 threes, I believe it was, or excuse me, he hit 2 threes early on in that first quarter, second, I believe it was the first quarter that he hit those, but it was just like you could tell, it might have been the second quarter, but he loves playing against zone. And he talked about that. He said, look, when anybody plays a zone against me, I light up. He said that just means that the corner and the elbow threes are going to be open. And that is his bread and butter. Like that corner three is Aaron Nesmith's bread and butter. So having a guy like that back out there that can really spread the floor is really good. And I think you guys are very well aware of how special Aaron Nesmith can be when he pump fakes and then drives on the baseline. Like we've seen some nasty poster dunks from Aaron Nesmith, one particular against the Cavaliers and Jared Allen, when he pump faked on that corner three and just rose above Jared Allen and slammed it home. Like that is really what he can do well. So, I mean, I was glad to see him get a lot of minutes out there in the first half. And those minutes that he played, like, it was really impactful. And so I really respect Aaron Nesmith a lot. And this is where I want to kind of dive into what happens with the rotation. And should Aaron Nesmith start? Should Ben Mathurin start? How does it impact Jarace Walker? So let's just start with the big one here. Who should start? Who shouldn't start? They've been playing really well with Ben Mathurin as a starter. They've really kind of turned things around. That lineup's been very good number-wise, and they haven't played particularly great the last couple of games. Like the Cavs game, they weren't great. This game against Philadelphia, they weren't great, and they were pretty good on Thursday when Mathurin did not play, and Nesmith got the start. So I think I respect Coach Carlisle saying, you know what, we're just going to keep it fluid. We're basically going to keep it open, and guys have a case. Like he basically said, here comes Ben Mathurin into the starting lineup, and the team's been playing better. Why should you pull him when they've really proven they can work together? But at the same time, Aaron Nesmith got hurt. And should he lose his starting spot due to injury when he was really impactful for this team, especially all of last season? So it's a fine line to toe. I feel like the majority of like how I felt is like Mathurin with the bench makes more sense to me in terms of like what they need in terms of another scorer. But one thing that I didn't really like totally think all the way about was who will it impact more emotionally? Who will it impact more mentally? And I think we're at a point now where you can say, Ben Mathurin is a guy that I think it would do more damage to bring him now back off the bench and to start Nesmith over him. And I think that Nesmith is a guy that he's going to figure things out. He's not going to let it bother him one way or the other, whether he starts or comes off the bench. Sure, everybody wants to start, but he even said that in his post-game press conference. He said, we got a lot of talent, and, I don't have a problem with it. If it's what's best for the team, I'm going to put the team first. And I think that's why the Pacers love Aaron Nesmith. He wants to put the team first no matter what. And some guys might just say that, and you might just kind of write it off as like, media speak or media talk. But I wholeheartedly believe Aaron Nesmith when he says that, because Aaron Nesmith has always been a team first guy. He loved the opportunity to come here, and they were playing him at the 4 a lot in his first season here. Then he played some 4 with the second unit last year before they got Pascal Siakam. And so when they got Siakam, because he was playing over Jarace Walker, so when they got Siakam, that put him in the starting lineup a lot more. There was combinations of like Bruce Brown, Buddy Hield with Tyrese and Obi and Miles, and it was not a great 5. So Aaron's been off the bench before, and he's been off the bench with Mathurin before. So, here are 2 guys that are very capable of playing. And now here's what I think. I just think personally, like if you put Mathurin on the bench, I think it's going to bother him. And I like the role that he's playing with this team right now. Asking him to become like your go-to scorer off the bench, things like that. Like, yeah, he can do it, but is he going to revert to some of the old habits he created? I think because he's in this different role now, it's allowed him to be more of a, oh, I need to go rebound. Oh, I need to go defend. Oh, I need to go do this. Like, there's enough scoring out here with Miles and Pascal and Tyrese. Like, I don't need to be that guy. And it's kind of allowed him to grow in different areas. So I think that's a big thing here. And then number 2, it depends on how many minutes they're going to play, but if you were to split them basically just straight up like 24-24, you could start Mathurin, but then bring in Nesmith early into the first quarter and, bring Mathurin back in with the second unit a little bit more that way and still allow him to kind of be utilized with the second unit if you want scoring that way too. Because we've seen Mathurin play with the second unit when Nesmith is out. Like it was like he started, would come out early, and then go back in with the second unit with Pascal and TJ and Jarace and Thomas Bryant. Like they did different combinations of that group together because Sheppard would come in early for him. So I think there's still ways they can go about doing things like that and still utilizing Mathurin in different ways. But I feel like right now, like my gut says like, yeah, Mathurin's skill set probably means more off the bench. But I think mentally you want to keep Mathurin so engaged that it makes a ton of sense to just keep him starting. Don't mess up the flow of this team. I don't think Nesmith is going to be, negatively affected by it. I think he's going to be fine because Nesmith always plays with a chip on his shoulder regardless of whether he's starting or not. And I think come playoff time, if Mathurin doesn't really answer the call, they'll make that decision then. But I think for the rest of the regular season, like they just got to play by ear. And if Mathurin and the starting five that they've been running out with starts to fall off, you have that option of going back to Nesmith. But if it's not going to ruffle too many feathers, if they just kind of keep it how it is, I would do that. It's like the one that ruffles the least amount of feathers is what I would probably do, just to try to keep things as connected as possible because this team is clicking right now, and I think everybody just wants to compete, contribute, and go as far as they can. Like we've seen this Pacers team exceed expectations before, so I'm just kind of in that boat of like, yeah, let's just kind of play it out and see what happens. But in terms of Jarace Walker, like this is a tough conversation because I mentioned it earlier. Like Ben Sheppard, it's like, how do you take this guy to the rotation? He's been so consistent. I think there might be times potentially when you see Jarace maybe get some minutes over Sheppard, depending upon the matchup. I also could see times where maybe they don't play Thomas Bryant at the backup five and go a little bit smaller with Obi and Jarace at the four. I think that there's optionality there by doing that, and it just really depends on who's out there guarding or who's out there playing against the Pacers. Because if there's a bigger wing out there, like, do you want to throw Sheppard out there who's a little bit smaller, or do you want to put Jarace out there who's got that 6'8" size with that 7'2" wingspan? Like we've seen Jarace really lock down and defend at times this year, but it's just been a lot more inconsistent than what you get from Sheppard. So I don't necessarily love it. I hope that Rick can continue to find a way maybe to play 11 just so Jarace can kind of continue to work and figure things out. But I know it's going to be hard. It's hard to play 11 guys. Like throughout the regular season, sure, you can do it. But come playoff time, you'll see it go down to 8 or 9. The Pacers love their depth, and that's one thing that they've really hit home on is their depth is their strength. So it's tough. It's a tough conversation. I really don't have a right answer for you. Like everybody so far, in my opinion, deserves to get minutes. It's up to Rick Carlisle and his coaching staff to figure things out. And I understand if you're upset that Jarace Walker does not get minutes because Carlisle feels like he's kind of the 11th man. Like I totally understand the frustrations. I think that he is worthy of playing because I feel like we've really started to see Jarace play his best basketball of late and go back a week ago. Carlisle said after the Cavs game that was the best game of Jarace Walker's career. So you're starting to see Jarace turn that corner. The same reason I was kind of against pulling Mathurin from the starting five is I don't want it mentally to, impact Jarace Walker. I think that it could, but at the same time, minutes aren't just given to anybody. You have to earn them. And if somebody's playing better than you and doing what they're asked to do on a more consistent basis, like you can't be mad about it. You just got to work hard. And so, a lot of people have said and stressed like this team needs a consolidation trade. There's some that absolutely hate that idea, but when you don't make a consolidation trade and everybody's healthy, then you have guys like Jarace Walker out of the rotation potentially. So we'll see what happens. I'm curious to just kind of continue watching that. It's a very small sample size of what is to come. Just one game with everybody healthy and back. So, but based on that observation from the first game, that's where I'm at. But overall, like I said, this is a game to me. The Pacers, they needed to win it. They win this series 2-1 against Philly. So if somehow Philly gets hot, like they did last year at the end of the season, they start getting guys healthy and there's like a tiebreaker situation. The Pacers do have the season series tiebreaker. They only got to see Joel Embiid for 2 of the 12 quarters that were possible to play this year. I believe Paul George only played in 1 game. So, they didn't really get to see this team fully loaded, but the 76ers team has just been up and down all season long with injuries. And there was a question that one of the reporters from Philadelphia asked Nick Nurse, like, this is your 41st game of the season. reflecting on the first 41 games, like how would you kind of describe what this team is right now? And he basically just said it's really hard to pinpoint anything because we've had so many injuries. And when we asked Carlisle before the game about, having a log jam here in terms of like too many guys to play, he said, trust me, I'd rather have too many guys to play than too many guys on the injury report. He was like, go ask Nick Nurse how he feels about that, because they had so many guys out in the game against the Pacers and they've been dealing with it all year long. Like, yeah, Rick Carlisle is right. Like, you want your guys healthy, and it's better to have that problem than it is to have the problem of, oh shoot, who are we going to suit up tonight? Or who are we going to pull up from the G League on a two-way deal? Like that's not ideal. You don't want to see Enrique Freeman and Quentin Jackson playing 25 minutes a night. That is not ideal for the Pacers. They want to see the guys that are NBA level talent and ready to play on a night-to-night basis on the floor. So, they've done a good job of addressing stuff in terms of like going out, getting Thomas Bryant. They needed a big, they needed a backup big, and I think Thomas Bryant has exceeded expectations, especially for me. I didn't know how good Thomas Bryant would be with this group, but it has been really fun to watch. I feel like almost every game that I've seen him play, like obviously the Pacers are playing great basketball, but he has been a positive impact player. So it's a great pickup by the Pacers for basically nothing. And you get, a chance to kind of see if he could be maybe another piece that you add long-term to this team. And probably a smaller contract. A lot of question marks with James Wiseman and Isaiah Jackson. I mean, there's a possibility that one or both could be traded at the deadline to help the Pacers kind of save some money. So if they believe in Thomas Bryant that much too, like they could obviously bring him back next year, and great fit locker room wise and vibe wise. So it's just, there's a lot of stuff going on here right now with the Pacers, but all good things. So they will be heading to Paris, France. They might have already left today, but they'll be getting there shortly, and they'll be there all week. They have a game on Thursday and Saturday, so no Pacers basketball till Thursday. So we're going to have to figure out what to do content-wise without that. But I do believe me and Facci are going to be doing our top 10 trade targets this week. I also know Tony East will be joining us as well. And there's a good possibility that Tom Crean is on this podcast later this week as well to kind of talk about Thomas Bryant, his impact. And it'll be good to talk with Coach Crean, because Coach Crean is very, active on social media, on Twitter, and has had a lot of high praise for Thomas Bryant. So I think it'll be good to hear from him and just kind of like his thoughts on this Pacers team, what he's seeing, and we'll ask him some other questions potentially too. But that is in the works. It's not officially confirmed yet, but I'm just going to spoil it because we're here at the end of the podcast, and it's supposed to happen if everything goes right. So there is a good chance that Tom Crean will be on here at the end of the week. But Tony East, he'll be on with us Tuesday morning. Maybe tomorrow you'll hear Troy Pepper. I'm going to record with him tonight. I'm doing this, post-game pod around 2:30 afternoon on Sunday. So Troy Pepper and I will be talking tonight. And then after that, Facci will be back for the Tony East podcast. So a lot of good content coming your way. Trade targets as well. I'm sure you guys will love that, because the Pacers still could make a trade. I mean, there's been more links to them to Cam Johnson after we've talked about it. And it seems like, why are they continuing to, be involved? But I mean, there's pros and cons to it, like we talked about. If you didn't check that episode out, go ahead and go back and look at that in the archives where we did talk about Cam Johnson trades and the pros and cons to doing that. But Pacer Nation, it's great to see the Pacers playing great basketball again. 14 of their last 18, they've been victorious, with those losses coming to some of the best teams in the league: OKC, Cleveland, Boston, and unfortunately Milwaukee. But, they've been playing really good basketball, so you have to like the direction this team is heading. Hopefully this time off in Paris, they can get some time to, connect with one another. And I just don't want them to lose that momentum. That's my biggest fear heading into Paris, is like, they've been playing so well right now. They're so connected. I don't want this to be a distraction. I hope they can go out there, at least split with San Antonio. San Antonio's been playing much, much better basketball. Wemby, obviously, in his second year, going back to his hometown, like, it's going to be Wemby mania. So I'm expecting all of that, but I want to see the Pacers continue to kind of build off that momentum they've established. Don't want this to be a distraction with all these other extracurricular activities they have to do throughout the season. It's a different thing, but it's good. It's good for the NBA for them to do it. So to be ambassadors of the NBA, that's great. So with that being said, you guys know where to follow us at Pacers Pod STP. I'm at Alex Golden NBA. Facci's at _FACCI. And if you're open to Pacers can finish this road trip with 2 victories against the Spurs, hit me with those 3 words. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow.